Hello and welcome to the demonstration video on the 2020 Burstner Lyseo 728. So I'll walk you around the outside and then we'll move on to the inside. So if we start with the cab, I'll show you the basic cab controls. So to release the bonnet on these, the bonnet release catch is just here on the passenger side on the end of the dashboard. So you pull that down, that will release the bonnet. While we're here, the pressure tyre for the tyre pressures are displayed just here. It's best sometimes to revert to the actual tyres themselves, because sometimes they've got specialist camper tyres on that are designed to take higher pressures, but that's where the tyre pressures are displayed. So if we go to the bonnet itself, so under here we have the very end. Just there is where the washer fluid is filled. You've got your coolant, brake fluid, oil, dipstick. If you ever need to jump start this vehicle, it's done via a little tab which is underneath a cover there, which I'll take off now. So this little cover here, sometimes you've just got to put a key. There's a little tab there. You just got to put a key into that and then it'll allow you to flip this up. So the positive terminal is that there, so your red cable onto that, and then your negative or earth is onto that cable there, and that's if you ever need to jump start the vehicle. So as we make our way around the passenger side of the outside of the motorhome, you've got your fuel filler here. So diesel into there, you'll need your key for that, so the engine key for that. Next one along is your service locker and water fill. So this here is your water tank. To fill that, you just undo this nozzle here, and then there's an overflow flap here that stops water spilling out as you're filling it. So as you're filling it, it should look like that, and that's, as I say, this flap just stops any spillages going into the locker as you're filling it. So you just put a hose pipe into that, fill it until well, you can actually see the water rising because it's a clear tank, but there's no problem with you filling it until it actually pours out, and that's what this flap is there to stop. So when you take that flap off, you just put it onto there, and this little bar here, which I'll come to in a second, fits over the top of it to keep that in position. So the water tank here, you've got access to it via this cap here that just unscrews. You shouldn't ever really need to take that off. It's just if you need access into it, if you want to sanitize the tank or just have a visual check on how much water's in there. To drain the water tank down, it's this this turn handle on the top here. You can actually drain this water tank down to 20 litres, which is shown here. So 20 litres is when they weigh the vehicles, they take into account 20 litres of water, which is 20 kilos. So there's the nozzle on here. If you turn it, you can see it pouring out of the bottom there. And if you turn it further, it'll drain completely down for the 20 litres. So it'll drain the remaining 20 litres. So if you just turn it to the point where it's draining, it'll drain down to 20 litres. If you turn it further again, it will then drain down the full 20 litres. So in here we have the mains hookup point, so that's where you would put your cable into to get mains supply into the vehicle. So you open this locker up, plug into the main socket there, and then there's a little nodule out there for the cable to go through, and then that'll allow you to close this door and have mains coming into the vehicle with the door closed. In here also we've got the drain down system. So this drains down the water boiler. Again, it's important that that's done in winter conditions, the same as the tank. You don't want to leave any water in this vehicle and let it freeze. If it does that, it could expand, turn into ice, and damage the pipe work that's all in here, and also the boiler itself. So you can manually do that by turning this lever on top of the drain down valve, and again it'll just pour out underneath. It's also thermostatic, this valve, so that's in the closed position. You also need to just push that little blue tab in there at the bottom, and that's fully closed. So what it'll do is it'll sense the temperature. If the temperature reaches 6 degrees or less in this cupboard here, it will automatically drop all the water out of the boiler to protect that from freezing. There's also another little drain there that drains down the residual water in the taps and in the pipes. That is in the closed position now. That's in the open position, and again that just pours out onto the floor. So in its usable position, it should be horizontal and look like that. So this is the bar that I was referring to earlier. What this is a drain down key for the waste water tank. So there's an indication inside the vehicle on the control panel to tell you about the level of the fresh water and also the wastewater. To drain down the wastewater, so everything that goes down the shower and down the sink, you're using this key here to go onto the end of that bar there, and then you turn that and the wastewater will drain from this pipe here. So you're turning it that way. There's obviously not, there we go. So that's where your wastewater would drain from. And then to close it, you're just going back the other way. So that's where you drain down the wastewater. Above that, we've got the gas locker. So 2 gas bottles in this model. To turn on your gas supply, you just turn the dial on the top of the bottles, and it's got its changeover valve here, so it'll actually, you can select which bottle you want. So in this case we're drawing from this bottle here, and you can see that it's telling us that that's full, so it's receiving pressure from both of those bottles. If you've got it in the middle, it'll receive pressure from both the bottles. Over to that side, it's just one. These little green buttons on top of the bottles that are attached to the tubes, what they call crash valves. So if you've got the gas switched off and then you reconnect a bottle for the first time, you've got to push those down. So in theory, what this allows you to do is travel with the gas switched on. If it senses that there's a sudden jolt, it'll actually switch the gas supply off. So when you first put a new gas bottle on, you've just got to push those and you'll hear it hiss, and then you know that you've got gas coming into the vehicle. That's the pressure regulator. So the pressure regulator is built in, so you don't need a regulator on top of your bottles. Inside this bag here, the previous owner has left a spanner, which attaches to this bolt here, and that detaches your gas bottle from this pipe. So when you're ready to put a fresh gas bottle in there, that's how you disconnect the gas bottle. Next one along, we've got vents for the fridge. So what it does is it draws cool air in at the bottom, expels warm air at the top. They are just vents. Just need to make sure that they're kept clean and free of debris in order that the fridge can work correctly. So as we work round to the back, we've got the garage. So this one's been fitted with a bike rack. I'm not 100% sure how this works. I've not seen this model before, but I can see that you press this button here and this bike rack, I think, then extends out and you can load the bikes onto it. But again, I'd have to refer to the manufacturer's handbook for that, which I've not seen this model before. In the garage here, this model's been fitted with rear airbags on the rear axle. So what that allows you to do is strengthen the suspension effectively in each corner, and they can be pumped up to stabilise the vehicle if you're carrying heavy loads in the rear garage. So here we've got the toolkit for the wheels if you need to change the wheel, and then your spare wheel is mounted just there. So on the back panel of this motorhome, we've got the standard manufacturer's rear view camera that comes on the double din radio display, and they've fitted also a secondary camera which is mounted on the rear view mirror. So one of those is factory fitted, and this one here on the left, and that uses the stereo system. This one here has been fitted retrospectively and is on monitor, which is mounted to the rear view mirror, and that's on constantly. But you can change, there's 2 lenses on that, so you can change the lens by pressing a button on the actual monitor itself. Just need to keep those clear and clean and free of debris. It will give a distorted vision if they're particularly wet, but there's 3 lenses there, so one of them should give a clear readout. So on the driver's side then of the motorhome, we've got further access to the garage. There's ladders in there for the beds. So this is just the other side of the storage, the garage storage area. It looks like they've left in here a windbreak for the side of the awning. There is a separate awning video which I'll put in the link for this one. I'll send you 2 separate videos. But yeah, that's just so you've got your carpets in there, and you've got just access to the storage which I showed you on the other side. So moving on towards the front then, here we've got external main socket. You do need an adapter for that, so that's just, imagine that's a continental adapter with 2 pins in it. You need the adapter that changes it from 2-pin to 3-pin. So that's a European 2-pin adapter, a 2-pin plug that you need the adapter to change it to UK 3-pin. You've got a 12-volt socket for outside, so you need the corresponding 12-volt adapter to go into that if you want to use a 12-volt appliance outside. It looks like here that there is a feed into the vehicle, but they need to be wired up, so I wouldn't worry about that. But it looks like the previous owners got a feed coming to an external socket, so that if you wanted to watch television outside, it looks like you can plug into that and watch the television outside. I'm not 100% sure how that's been wired, but it looks like that's the setup that the previous owners had there. So moving on here, we've got the external gas point. So that's useful if you want an external barbecue point. What happens here is that nozzle there, you just take that off, and then there's a push fitment that goes into that, and then that push fitment, you attach the tube to the other end of that push fitment, so you'd have a tube coming off there then to your barbecue, or whatever length you want it to. And what you do is you just push in that push fitting, and this collar slips that way, and then to release that push fitment that goes into the end of there, you just slip that collar back, and that releases off the piece that goes into there. Not sure if there's one in here, but we do have those in the shop. And then to switch that on, you turn the tap that way, but you do have to have the push fitment in for that to work. And then there's a separate key for that to lock that in position. Underneath that, we've got the toilet cassette, so that all the toilet waste that goes down the toilet ends up in this cassette. There's an indication inside near the toilet to tell you when that's full. So when that needs emptying, what you do, you lift that up, slide this out, and then you just slide this completely out, and then I'll show you how to empty it when it's on the floor. Okay, so when you've got the toilet cassette out, and to empty it, what you do is you slide this nozzle forward, unscrew the cap on the end, so that completely comes off, and then just literally pour it out of the end of that nozzle. As you're doing so, press this button in here, and it lets air in as the liquid is coming out of the end, and that stops it from glugging. So it effectively lets air in there, and it just shoots it out in one pure flow. So this cassette takes the blue chemical, the toilet chemical, and that breaks down all the solids and gets rid of all the smells. So to put the chemical into that, you just slide this back here, and then open up this blade, and then that's just access straight into the cassette. So what you do is you pour the required amount of chemical into there, and I noticed there was some in the gas locker, some of the blue chemical. Just put a thin layer of water in the bottom, and then the required amount of chemical, and then it's ready to use again. It's a good idea to swill those out, obviously, once you've emptied it for the first time. Fill it again with fresh water, swill that out, and then put the blue chemical and a little bit of water into the bottom, and it's ready to use again. So before you put it back in, make sure that that's pointing in that direction, and then slide that back, and then it just slides back in, back into its cassette housing there. They do have a handle on these with wheels, so the wheels are on the side there, and that just allows you to wheel it over to the disposal point, and then this extends out, so that's your handle to pull it along behind you. So that concludes the outside, just with the exception of this awning, but I will send a separate awning video to show you how that works. But the awning winder is just on a clip there, just in the garage. Okay, so if we're inside the vehicle now, we just start with the cab. To swivel these seats around, it's just this lever here, and if you just pull that towards the middle and then turn that and spin it around, you might need to go forward and back with the seat a little bit in order to get it to go around past the door handle there. So if you pull forward, and then that'll allow the seat to go all the way around. So you've got to pull that handle and then go forward and back a little bit, and it'll allow you to turn the seat all the way around. And then that's the same on both sides, on the driver's and passenger side. So with the seat swivel around, then that's your lounge area. Just one thing to note, that the charger unit on these is housed underneath the passenger seat. So this little hatch here, if you flip this down, that's where the charger unit is, and there's some 12 volt fuses on the front of that. So your 12 volt appliances, the fuses for those are on the front there. You can probably just see those. So that's the charger unit, and that's where that's housed. So just underneath this locker here is where the two leisure batteries are. So just underneath that panel, you've got your 2 leisure batteries. And then there's a monitor there just showing you about the solar panel, so you can see that's charging the leisure batteries there. So just at the front here, next to the where the batteries are, you've got your underfloor storage. To gain access to that, you just flip that one end, and then it reveals a ring that you can then lift, and that gives you access to your underfloor storage. There's another one of those just in the kitchen area there, and then they are locked as well, but there's a key on the key rings. I've checked that they all work, so it's just extra security for your underfloor storage. So just then the table adjustment, it's just got that little lever there, so that's fixed. When you pull that down, it allows you to move the table in that direction. It'll also go side to side as well. So in this column next to the door here is where the control panel is, and also your heating control. So your main control panel is switched on and off via that button there. So you basically you won't get most of your functions working without that being switched on. The other buttons on here, this is showing you your leisure battery condition. So you can see there we've got 12 volt on, and we've got all the lights on, so that's showing your battery in good condition there. You can see that lighting up. Then we've got your engine battery condition, so again in good condition. You can see that lighting up there. And then the top one here is your fresh water. So there is a bit of water in there, as we showed it was draining out as we tried to drain it down. And then your next one, the bottom one here, is your wastewater level. So that's showing as empty. There was just a trickle came out when we tried to open that outside. And then this one here switches your water pump on. Okay, so there has to be a method of pumping your water from the freshwater tank that we looked at outside through the boiler and through all the pipe work, and then it eventually ends up coming out of your tap. So when you first put the water on, put the water in outside in the locker that I showed you where to do that, what you need to do is purge the system. So make sure the water pump is switched on the control panel just here, and then switch the tap over to hot. It's a single lever tap, and then just push it up and wait until you get a pure flow of water coming out of your tap, and then you know that the boiler is full. So what it does is it pumps, you'll see it spluttering like that, and then you need to wait until you get that pure flow of water coming out of your tap. Wait until it stops spluttering, and it's just a steady flow of water. So the way that works is that it's pumping water from the tank that we showed you outside, filling up the boiler. working its way through all the pipe work and then eventually coming out of your tap. So when you're draining that boiler down on the black valve that I showed you outside, if you open up this tap as well, it lets the air come in through this tap as it's dropping out of the motorhome underneath. So it's important that you drain, that you purge the water system through when you first fill it full of water. So you need to do that on the hot side and then do exactly the same on the cold side as well, and wait until you get that pure flow of water coming through your tap like that. So next to that we've got the heating controls. So to switch that on, press and hold on the wheel on this control here. So the first one you've got flashing here is your temperature control. So if you again give another press, then select your temperature, so 22 degrees room temperature. So that selects your temperature. That's for the motorhome, so that's the motorhome heating. The next one along, if you just turn this dial around to the next position, that's your water heating. So you've either got off, and then if you just scroll one click to the right, you've got eco, which is 40 degrees, hot, which is 60 degrees, or boost, which will take the priority from the heating of the motorhome and give it to the heating of the water. So the motorhome won't be heated, it'll just heat your water, but that's in order to heat it very quickly. If you want to come out of any of these menus, you just click the back button there. Okay, so I'll just turn that back to off for now. And then the next one along, you can see that flashing. That is your power source. So you've got gas. Next one along is a mix of gas and electric on 1 kilowatt, a mix of gas and electric on 2 kilowatts, electric only on 1 kilowatt, electric only on 2 kilowatts. The reason for the electric, the reason for it being able to select the kilowatts difference is because if you're on a site with a low ampage fuse, just select 1 kilowatt and then it won't blow the fuse. Next one along is just if you wanted to just vent the fan, you can. So when you put the heating on, the fan will blow at a speed which is relevant to the temperature that you've selected. You can just select, if the heating isn't on, for the motorhome to just vent. So if you just want, so we switch that off and then go to the fan, you can just vent, okay? But it automatically blows, the fan will automatically blow at a rate that is relevant to the temperature it's trying to achieve. You can select this dial here, you can select for the heating to come on at a certain time, so start and come off at a certain time. This one here sets your time, so that's now at the correct time. And then you can change your settings to 24 hours, your temperature, how you want it to read out in Fahrenheit or degrees, but there's various settings on there, but the main controls are across the top here, and you're just scrolling through with this wheel and which one you want to select. And when you want to select one, press the button in. If you want to come out of that menu, press the back button. Underneath that is where the television is housed. To release the television bracket, you just pull down on this lever here, and that will allow the television to come off of its mounting, and then you can move it directionally. So moving on then to the oven. When you first put your gas on, again similar to the tap, you've got to purge the air through, so you need to switch your gas hob on, wait until that's lit and it stays lit, and then you know that you've purged all the air out of the pipes and you've just got a pure flow of gas coming through your pipework. Just as we move towards the back then, the lower, how to lower the bed, you need a key for that, which is just in there, and then you're just pressing the up and down button on this, so that lowers the bed above the dinette. So it'll only come to that height, and then you use the ladder that's in the garage to sit on there to gain access to the bed. So I'll just take that back up and I'll show you the override for that if the battery goes flat. So when the bed, if the bed ever jams or the battery goes flat, there's in this cupboard here, in the nearest cupboard to the back that comes down with the bed, there's a little cutout there, and there's a winder that goes into like a little Allen socket that you can wind the bed up and down should the battery go flat or the fuse go, or you can't get the bed up electrically. There's a manual override for that just there. So just moving on from the hob, the fridge operates on a three-way system, so it can use three different fuel types, and you operate that via this control panel here. So to switch it on, that's your on and off button. You can select mains power, so that'll work perfectly well on mains and stay cold. You can select gas, again it'll work perfectly well on gas. The next one along is 12 volt, that uses the engine alternator power to power the fridge while you're traveling, but it's not very efficient on that method. It's only really to keep it cool as you're traveling. If you just want to switch it to automatic, so it'll automatically select the most relevant power source, that's what that button is there. So it'll look for electric first, then if it can't find that, it'll try and find gas, and then it'll try and find 12 volt. So if you press the automatic button, I would just leave it in that position. This is your temperature control. So if it's a really hot day, you want the fridge to work harder. If it's a really cold day, then select the lower settings, because otherwise the fridge will ice up. So onto the bathroom then. The toilet cassette that we showed you outside is connected to this toilet. So so use the toilet, lift the lid up. This slider here opens and closes the blade, which is inside. And that's how I showed you, the one I showed you how to open and put the chemical into. So that directly connects to that cassette. So to use it, you open up the blade, use the toilet, press the flush button, and then make sure you close the blade then, because otherwise you've got the fluid in the toilet cassette which is underneath sloshing around, which you don't want. And then that little indicator there tells you when the cassette is full. So on towards the back, there's a little step here to gain access to up onto the two single beds, which is just pulled out there. And then to release it, you just push that little catch in there. For the door here, the catch to release the door is just up there. That slides across. Just make sure you've got it past that catch before you set off, otherwise the door will be sliding around as you're travelling. So there's an infill piece here to, if you wanted to make the two single beds into one larger double, and then there's a further cushion just in there which clips in this area here, and then you can sleep that way and it's one larger double bed. Just one more thing, underneath the oven is where your main circuit breaker is. So that actually is a tester as well to make sure that you've got mains coming in to test. So you push that button there, that tests to make sure you've got mains coming in. That's a main, like a domestic circuit breaker. If there's a short on any of the circuitry, they will go into the off position and they're in the on position. So that concludes the instructional video. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those before you collect or on the day that you collect. Hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing you on the day that you collect your new motorhome.